Okay, everyone good? Got a snack? Got your drinks? Okay. Like Dana said, my name is Tanner Maris. I work here at Planning Center. I am a husband, a father, a wannabe rock climber, and a developer. Um, so, all my top text disappeared. It just says text. Used to say intro to React hooks. So before I, now it's just deleted. Before I keep going on about hooks, I want to tell you what they are. So what the heck is a hook? A hook is a function provided by React that lets you hook into React features from your functional components, and it just became available in 16.8. So when I first heard about hooks, I had two issues with them. The first one, and I might be in the minority, but I was like, what? Functional components? I don't really write a lot of functional components. I'm not sure why, but until I wrote this talk, I'd always thought of them as being very different from the components I normally write, which were with classes. Functional components were just the dumb, stateless view components that people started with that they usually needed to rewrite once they figured out how big their problem really was. So instead of going through all that, I would just save the time and start with the class and then be done. Second, I had a lot of hesitation to immediately adopt them because I thought that if you used functional components, then I had to change the way I programmed from object-oriented programming to functional programming. And I didn't want to have to write Ruby and Rails with classes in object-oriented land and then switch over to JavaScript and write functionally. What I didn't realize was that I was already writing my JavaScript functionally, even though I was using a class to do it. I've never thought about React components as an object sending messages to other objects, or having a relationship to components like a mountain bike component that inherits from a bike component. Everything just extends React component, so we don't usually use inheritance in React. So we're not talking about writing React classically versus functionally. We're talking about writing class components versus function components. And it was this mental shift that kind of removed all my hesitation. So I didn't have to change the way I thought about them. I just had to change the way I wrote them. And I've been writing and thinking functionally this whole time. So all I really need to do is write my React with functions instead of classes, not flipping between OOP and functional programming. It's important to me that myself and all the people I talk to understand why I should do something. So I'm not just going to write and use hooks because someone from React on High told me to. It was me figuring out the uselessness of the class that changed my mind. It was something that was baked into React core to expose the features of React, but now is unneeded now that they found a better way to do that. And that better way to do it is hooks. So let me show you what I mean. Don't look at that. Jeez. Sneak peek. Okay. Ooh, got really bright now. Okay. So here we have a standard function component, and here's a row for styling, and it just prints a name. So what if we want, this is not, nothing, you can't do anything with it yet. So what if we wanted to make this name an input? We'd have to turn this function into a class, add some state, and then add an input that was driven by that state. So to save you watching me fumble through that whole thing, I've just copied it and rebuilt it. So here is that class. So we have, I'm using only stable JavaScript syntax, so we have all this constructors, super props nonsense. And then I've got the default state for my name, which is Han Solo, this function binding because JavaScript, and then here's the actual render. So here's the input with the state.name, and then our name change handler here. And we can prove that it works by deleting it. Yay, okay. So how would we do that with our function now? Well, I'm gonna write the code that I wanna write, and then let's see how hooks can help me. So first I'm gonna delete the props because we're not gonna use those anymore. And this is gonna be a bunch of coding, so I'm gonna mess up like 1,000 times. I'm already doing it. Whew, geez. Okay, so the value is gonna be a name, and then we're gonna have an on change. Oh God. Whew, come on. Okay, handle, name, change, geez. Okay, and then we need to close this guy up. So I know I'm gonna need a name, so let's get a name out of here, and I don't know where I'm gonna get it yet. And then I know I need a function for the handle name change, and that's gonna get an event from the input, and then we're going to do something with that. Normally I'd set state, but since I don't have set state here, we're just gonna make this up, and it always auto-completes that crazy SVG thing. So I'm just gonna set name with the event.target.value. And so I know I'm gonna need that set name as well. So these two things, I don't know where I'm going to get them yet, but they seem pretty related, right? So name is the current value of name, and set name is the thing that updates it. And wherever I get that is probably going to be the same place. You might want to adjust my mic. I moved it a little bit if it's too loud. So name and set name, those go together. And wouldn't it be great if we could get these from React's local state? And it would be awesome if we could just use state. And this is the name of the first hook I want to show you. And it's how they expose React's local state. And we just call it useState. It does take a default, or it takes a property, which is the initial state. And so we're going to call it Han Solo here. And let's save that. So now we can go over here. Let me refresh because reasons. So there we go. So we've got our function component now handling state. Let's go back to our class. So back in the class, I want to add now another row to this. So instead of just collecting the job, or instead of just collecting the name of Han, I want to collect the job as well. And this is going to be a lot of typing as well, but I know exactly what I need because it's already there. Geob. Copy this nonsense. There it is again. Joib. Jeez Louise. Okay, so let's handle name change instead. I should just alias Geob to job. Instead of set state name, we're going to set state job. Go away. And then just to actually see what the heck we're doing, let's copy this row. And instead of getting state from name, we're going to get from job. There's Geob. You're going to see that a lot. And oh, hey, look at geez. So now we have our smuggler. He can edit, cool. And now we've got our, so 2 inputs, lovely. So how would we do that now with hooks? So immediately you might think, okay, well, we're using state here, so we're probably going to need to make an object, put a name on here, and then maybe make a job. And we could do that. UseState will take any primitive, so we can use an object, we can use strings and anything. So, but we're going to miss on an opportunity here if we start putting an object here, because now we have to do that same song and dance we were doing in the class where we had to manage merging the object together and all those sorts of things. So instead, there's no limitation. I shouldn't have deleted that. There's no limitation that says we can't just declare useState again. And so we can change this to job, change this to set job. Geob. Hello. And now we can keep these nice and separated. So conceptually, name and job are different, and it makes sense that we can keep track of them separately. So we have now a separate job variable and a separate handler to set the job. And so I need to copy this function to pass to our input. You son, yeah. Now I'm going to type it so slow from now on that. Whew. Whew, okay. It's making me nervous. Hey! I don't know why my server's messed up. It's not live reloading right now, so I'm having to refresh. So there it is, 2 inputs, and we can see that the state is being managed separately, so they're not sharing, they're not getting confused. And what's interesting is the way that we declare these, there is nothing that tells, there's nothing obvious that says, which function should talk to which state handler. And so the way that React handles that is pretty interesting. It's just based on when you declared it. And that gives us one little gotcha, which means that we can't do anything like this and put this hook inside a conditional. That is frowned upon, not allowed. We can't do it because it confuses React. So we have to keep all of our hooks at the top level because of that. Oops, don't go too far. So now we've got those 2 useState declarations, and let's go back to our class again. So what's another thing we might reach into our into a class component for? Another one might be the lifecycle methods. So we've got component did mount, component did update, all those things, and we like to do stuff in those. So we might be firing off a request, subscribing to some events, or maybe manipulating the DOM in some way. So I'm going to play with a browser API called the document title, which is this little guy up here, this React app. And so we're going to mess around with him. So on component did mount, I'm going to change the document title to this.state.name plus space plus this.state.geob. And so now we can see Han Solo Smuggler up there. Hey! And if we go and change him, nothing happens because component did mount only runs on that initial render. So to get updating and synchronization between what's being rendered and what's up in the header there, or in the title, we need to hook into the other lifecycle event, component did update. That'll refresh. And now if we type, we can see it updating up there. Whoa, it's so cool. The Chewy Smuggler. So something, just a little side note, we had to do this, we had to put this duplicate code, or this code in two places, and we could extract it to a function, but we'd still have to remember to call that function in both places to keep things in sync. So just note that. So how would we do that with hooks now? Because side effects are a first-class feature of React, they've exposed that in a hook called UseEffect. And so to use an effect, we just call the UseEffect function. We pass it a function, and this is the thing that it will run as our side effect. So for us right now, we just want to use document.title equals name plus space plus geob. And you can see Han Solo Smuggler, and look at this. Already works up there. So what's cool about UseEffect is that by default, it gives us that same behavior. So it fires on the initial render and any subsequent render automatically. If for some reason this was a very complex computation, or we didn't want to render or re-render on every update, there is a way to opt out of that. I'm not going to do it right now, but there is a way. So back to our class. Now, the other thing I mentioned might be a side effect that we want to do is hook into an event, subscribe to an event. Maybe there's a database connection we want to subscribe to upstream, or there's a browser event like resizing the window we want to keep track of because we're managing the UI for the user or something. So I'm going to keep track of the window width. So I'm going to add another state here, and I'm going to use window inner width as the initial state. And I know I'm going to need a resize. So I'm just going to do that right now. And we're going to need, so here we're going to need to kind of we're going to mix it. We're going to have to jump into the same component did mount lifecycle event to set this up. So window.add, we're going to add an event listener. We're going to look for the resize. And we're going to handle resize. Ooh. Like this. And that does horrible things. Whoa. It didn't like that I called something that doesn't exist, because you have to actually make the function. Handle resize doesn't take a property, it just sets state. And so all it's going to do is set the state of the width to the window.innerWidth. Thusly, we can't actually see that it's doing it because we haven't rendered it yet. So to actually peek into that subscription, we need to make a row for it. And it's this.state.width. Phew, so much work just to get this stupid little guy. There he is. Whoa. But because we're good programmers, we know that when we subscribe to something, we should unsubscribe when we're done. We don't want to create a memory leak. So we have to hook into, some people do. We want to hook into component will unmount to do that. And the window gives us an API for that. We just remove event listener. No visual change here, but just the peace of mind knowing that we didn't make a memory leak for ourselves. So how will we do this with hooks? It's only slightly different. And the first thing you might think is, okay, go into that UseEffect that we have and just start typing window.addEventListener. And you totally could. We could use that same UseEffect, but we would miss out on a nice opportunity to separate the logic. So while this effect handles one thing, why don't we, there's no reason that we can't use another effect and make that take care of something by itself. So let's do that. So we're going to declare or call UseEffect again. We're going to pass the same window add event listener with a resize, and this time we don't need this, so it's just handle resize. I know I'm going to need some state to keep track of the width, so let's do width and set width. And we're going to use state again. So we got another use state, and we're going to use that window.innerWidth as the initial state. Oh, I broke stuff because I hit save like a. Okay, so and we need. So handle resize, because it's only being used in this effect, there's no reason that we need to declare anywhere else. So I'm just going to keep it nice and tidy and keep it inside this effect. So handle resize is just a function that calls set width, and it uses the window.innerWidth. Phew. And again, it's doing it right now, but we can't tell, so we need to actually take a look at it. Weoth. I know, so many. So here we go. Look at that. Whoa, there she is. And again, because we're good programmers, we want to clean up after ourselves. React gives us a nice way to do that with UseEffect. There's an optional return of a function, and if you return whatever function you return, it will call that on cleanup or on unmount. So we call our remove add event listener, remove event listener, and again, no visual change, but the peace of mind. Beautiful. So those are the only two hooks I want to show, but I want to show something cool we can do with it. So, yeah.
Would that bind an add event listener every time the page changes?
It definitely does. Yeah. So yeah, currently this one, the way this is set up, it will resubscribe to that event every time there's an update. And in this case, it's not a huge performance issue, but yeah, if you didn't want to do that. And it does that by default because if for some reason there were props that were coming in where there might be a different ID, it would get that ID and you could do something different with it. But so there is a way to opt out of that again if you don't want it. That's a great question. So UseEffect is a function. This component is a function. And what if another component wanted to take advantage of this window resizing control? How would I do that? Well, how do you share a function with another function? You extract another function. So I'm going to take all this stuff and pop it out. And we're just going to, whoa, too far. We're going to go to the bottom here, and I'm going to declare a function called UseWindow. Oh, I need to. Widow. I need to take my pills. So I'm going to declare a function called UseWindow I'm going to do one thing differently here. I need to return the width because that's the actual thing that this thing is keeping track of. So we're going to return width, but then I can go to the top and get a const width and just call UseWindow. And look at this. It still works. So it looks crazy, right? I just extracted a function. So nothing special about it, right? I just took all the body of everything and just shoved it down. But React actually calls this something. They call this a custom hook. And it is prefaced with the use word, and that gives us two things. One, it tells linters to keep track of it like it's a regular hook. So the React hook linting will warn you if you do that conditional violation. So if you put this custom hook inside a conditional, the linter will pop up and be like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. The other thing is that it's just good form for future readers of your code or future yourself. That way when you come to the top of this component, you can see, okay, this thing is using two state objects, and it also uses this window width thing, which may or may not contain more state or other side effects. So just good practice. And that is it for that. Let's go back to here. Oh God, I need my notes. Where was it? I'm so sorry. Watching me struggle. So now with the addition of hooks, we can all use React's features without needing a class. Nothing that I just wrote required a change in how I think about components. I'm going to compose them just like I normally would, but it allows me to separate them more clearly and with a simpler API. We can group side effects by logic versus by the lifecycle method. So back in the component did mount, And the component did mount had the mixture of the document title with the event subscription, and those were two things that were very unrelated, but we had to put them together because of the life cycle. So now we don't have to do that. We don't need to convert everything we've already done or only use hooks in a brand new project. It's completely backwards compatible and opt-in, and you don't even have to use them at all. I would say too, unless there's a component that has been a problem for you and you're like, oh man, I can, hooks might give me a way to make this simpler or make it make more sense. I wouldn't go and just rewrite stuff for fun. Unless that sounds fun to you. That is all I have. Thank you very much.